Hi there. My name is Sonja Bomhoff. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an ICF certified life and leadership coach. My work really primarily focuses on how to live a life awake, fully alive with greater vitality and wholeness. Integration is a great word that also describes that, or wholehearted living. Some of my work has really, for the past 8 years, has been connected with Dr. Brene Brown's research, which focuses on really the power of vulnerability, shame, authenticity, how all that shows up in our life, emotional resilience, all the things. So, how did I get into this? Back in 2012, I actually was in a very difficult place emotionally. I was crying out to God for help, not really sure where to turn, desperate to change, but didn't even know how at this point. And there's a saying that says, when the student is ready, the teacher arrives. And that was my experience. All of a sudden, I'm actually flying to Florida, and I hear this podcast and ministers talking about this book called The Gifts of Imperfection. And it just kind of rocked me at the core. I'm like, excuse me, the gifts of imperfection? It didn't even resonate in my brain. But it's like, when you have that knowing, like, I need to look into this. That was me. So I get to where I was going in Florida, and lo and behold, my husband had already downloaded a portion of the book for me, unbeknownst to him that I was listening to a podcast by it. So those are always signs I pay attention to. And then I went ahead and watched, there's a TED Talk called The Power of Vulnerability. If you haven't watched that yet, please do. Just go on YouTube, The Power of Vulnerability. I think there's over 25 million plus people who have watched it. The whole thing went viral. But it began this journey for me of really living more authentically and really learning who I am at the core of my being so that I, again, can live in greater vitality and health. So about that time was when Young Living essential oils were reintroduced back into my life. It was January of 2013, actually. So I'm desperate. I begin doing this work with Dr. Brene Brown for myself, not knowing that I was going to be a coach necessarily. And then I began utilizing some oils to help me because personally, I was not doing well. I was dealing with depression, anxiety, and I was looking for options to really help me thrive. So on this journey, it brought me into this place as I did this work for myself is, man, I really want to help other people live whole. And I have a huge passion for emotional health because I know what that's like. I grew up in a home where my mom was in and out of psychiatric wards. She just didn't have the help she needed emotionally to thrive. She did the best she could. But because of that, I didn't know what was necessarily going on. And I was actually quite afraid of emotion. If it was too big, what does that mean? Am I going to lose it? Am I going to be in the hospital? All that kind of stuff. Like, I could only be happy. That was the only acceptable emotion for me. Otherwise, I was scared of anything that didn't feel happy and bright. But let's be honest, right? Life isn't all happy and bright. And if we do not learn how to lean into our emotions in a healthy way, they will bite us in the butt eventually, right? There's this book called When the Body Says No by Dr. Gabor Mate. And that came into my life after walking through my brother, who was diagnosed with brain cancers, just journey and battle with cancer. And the aha moment of, oh my gosh, emotions, energy, and it goes somewhere. If I think I can avoid it and just push it away, I'm wrong. And eventually the body will say no. So it becomes imperative that we learn how to walk in greater emotional health. So I'm just going to leave you with just a couple tips today. We could talk about this subjects for hours. When I work with my clients, it's usually for a minimum of 12 weeks. So we don't have 12 hours on this video. So I'm just going to hit a couple really key points that I hope you will be able to utilize in your life to help you live a more abundant, healthy life. especially emotionally, because we are body, soul, and spirit, right? And our emotions are important. We cannot ignore them. If we haven't learned anything right now through everything we've been walking through on this earth, hopefully we're learning the importance of waking up to what's going on inside of us so that we can thrive. Because we cannot control many of our circumstances right now, can we? But what we can do is work on ourselves, what's going on inside of us, learning to get curious, learning to be patient and kind to ourselves. So first of all, I want to define what shame is. Shame was something that I was swimming in most of my life. If you are a perfectionist type, most likely you are dealing with shame, because the root of perfectionism is shame, right? So shame is the idea of, oh, I'm wrong. Like something is literally wrong with me. If you compare that to something like guilt, guilt is actually I did something wrong, where shame is I am wrong. See how debilitating that can be? So it's an attack against self, and it can be very subtle. It shows up in comparison cultures, scarcity, right? Not enough. So I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not successful enough. And really, quite frankly, our culture is really good, because we live in a consumer culture, at really showing us all the things that we do not have. Because if we become content, what happens? We just quit buying things, okay? So we need to become aware of what type of culture we live in, so we can make some healthier choices and not allow ourselves to be inundated constantly with more to buy, more to buy. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's shame. The antidote to shame, a really powerful antidote is self-compassion. So part of the difficulty with shame is when we're in it, we want to hide, we want to run, and guess what? It grows in silence, secrecy, and judgment. So the very thing we need is connection. We're hardwired for it. But what do we do when we're feeling shame? It's a full contact emotion. A lot of times, like for me, I feel really small. I get tunnel vision. I want to run. I want to hide. I feel worthless, quite frankly. And the very thing we need to do is reach out and share our story with someone who has earned the right to hear it, someone we trust. When you put words around shame, it loses its power. We got to learn to reach out and share our suffering with other people, because we all suffer, you guys, at one point or another. It's a part of the human experience. Self-compassion is imperative. I was the type of person who, when things were going well, I could be very kind to myself. But the minute I sensed maybe I'm failing, I'm not good enough, anything, things aren't going the way that I had hoped, I'm not performing at the highest possible potential, at least that's my perception, then here comes all of this. And I would just start beating myself up. Can you guys relate to that? Like a very harsh critic, an inner critic. Problem with that, right, is if you think about it, if you take a petri dish, I love Dr. Brene Brown gives this example. If you take a petri dish and it's full of shame and you douse it with self-compassion and empathy, guess what? It dissipates. This is how important it is to learn to be kind to ourselves and to be kind to others. So there are 3 attributes to self-compassion, and this is based on Dr. Kristen Neff's work out of UT Austin. And the first one is self-kindness, learning to treat yourself like someone you love deeply. So think about a person that you care so deeply about. Some of the things you say to yourself, would you say to them? No. And that's what we have to stop doing. Okay, that becomes my bar. If I wouldn't say it to them, I'm not saying it to me any longer. So realizing, number one, we have to have awareness of what our self-talk is. Step 1, if you can't see it, you can't change. And then when you start to realize, oh my goodness, I'm saying this to myself. No. What else can I say instead? Self-kindness, permission to be kind to myself right now. The second attribute of self-compassion is common humanity. So what happens often is we feel like when things are hard, I am the only one. There was a season in my life where I literally felt defective. That's shame. I am the only person struggling this way on the entire earth, which isn't even possible, right? But that's where my mind would go. And now I know, no, this is part of the human experience. We have to understand that part of being human means experiencing emotion, means going through hard things, means having a day that I feel sad and maybe I don't even know why. It doesn't mean I'm the only one, okay? So self-kindness, common humanity, and the last one is mindfulness. So we hear that word a lot, and it really, in a nutshell, means presence. So being present to what is going on in this moment, all right? So that, again, means we got to cultivate self-awareness. So, wow, I just realized that I'm feeling really sad right now. I'm going to be aware of that. I'm going to notice it. And I'm going to give myself permission to feel it and just move through it. Because what we resist persists. Or another way of saying that, what we resist can get stronger. So we actually need to be welcoming what we're feeling instead of trying to get rid of it. It doesn't work anyway. It actually makes it worse. So how about, oh my goodness, I'm feeling sad right now. Permission to be sad. I'm going to allow myself to feel that for just a moment. Realize that I can be kind to myself in this moment. Just the act of acknowledging it is quite kind, isn't it? Versus, this is what I used to do. What is wrong with you? Why are you sad right now? You need to get it together. You have no reason to be sad. Even saying that just makes me sad that I did that to myself for so long. And I imagine people who are watching this right now can relate, right? It's part of the human experience. So we're going to really work on self-kindness, common humanity, mindfulness. And a tangible way to do that is to just begin writing yourself permission slips. Permission to be kind to myself. Permission to feel what I'm feeling. If you need to, put it on a sticky note. Put it on your mirror. Really begin practicing kindness. And that's a tangible way to do it, is with permission slips. Right? So what we're learning is it is really important to allow yourself the space to feel what you're feeling. And again, however, I should say, don't over-identify with it. Okay? Because the other pitfall is, oh my gosh, I'm feeling really sad. I'm so sad. I am now sadness, right? And then we just get into a pit. That's not what I'm talking about. It's acknowledging it. If you're a person of faith, invite God into that place. Something I love to do actually now, when I'm in a really hard place, I'll sit. I'll give myself permission to feel what I'm feeling. And then I invite God into it. So whatever your spiritual tradition is, invite love into it. And for me, I invite God to just be with me and to love me in this place. And I'm telling you guys, when I do that, it just dissipates. So I don't invite God in to change my circumstances, to make it better. That's what I used to do. Now I invite him in just to be with me. And the very act of doing that tends to help me metabolize the emotion. It's so kind instead of resist it. All right, a couple other things that are very helpful that you may find helpful is taking a release oil bath. If you guys have heard me talk before, I'm a huge believer in it. 10 drops of release oil and a cup of Epsom salt. Get in a bathtub for half an hour. Go in one way with an intention to release any emotions, whatever needs to be released. Sit there, get out, feel different, literally. It's happened to me multiple times, right? Another thing is I'm a huge believer in this oil regimen by Dr. Gary Young. When I was in that really hard place in 2012, I just Googled like what I was dealing with, and up popped up this recipe. And I'm like, well, Dr. Young, he's the founder of Young Living. He must have a clue, because I knew nothing about oils back then. In fact, my background was pharmaceutical sales. So his regimen was take Harmony oil and apply it just above your navel. Take Joy oil and rub it on your heart. Take Valor and put it on your wrist. And then the last one was White Angelica. And I didn't even have that oil at the time. So I just used those three. And then I drank Ningxia Red, which I didn't know much about that either. But one thing I do know, now for sure is there's a lot of citrus oils in Ningxia Red, which helps us with our mood, right? Emotionally, it's uplifting. So that's what I did. And when I began using that regimen, I'm like, what is happening inside my body? I began to feel a shift almost immediately. I have a vivid memory of actually being in my bathroom, smelling this oil, right? Coming up because I had joy oil on my chest. I was probably doused in it by then. And I could feel literally in my body this change happening. I'm like, what is happening? It was so confusing to me. So I didn't understand the power of essential oils. So on my journey, I mean, I grab these oils often. I use them daily, multiple times a day. And then I sit and I do also a lot of meditation. 20 minutes a day minimum is what I recommend. We gotta learn to cultivate stillness, to be present. So the meditation I prefer to do is called centering prayer, because my faith tradition is Christian. And basically all that is I sit in silence with God. My intention is to consent to the presence and action of God within me. And I just sit in silence. And then my brain starts thinking about all these things. And then I gently just return to God. And the next thing you know, I'm thinking about something else. And I return again. And I return again. I read this article one time about, I think it was a nun who was talking how frustrated she was that her brain was so busy. And the minister said, how lovely, 1,000 opportunities to return to God. So just know your brain is busy. It's a part of it. That's not a deal breaker. You're not trying to get your brain not to be busy. That's why I like centering prayer. The power is in the returning. Every time you just return, that's the power. And what that's doing is helping you become more centered. It's strengthening your immune system. It is just helping you in so many ways. And really, to be honest, the reason I began my journey with contemplative prayer is I didn't know who I was. And I listened to this minister say, if you don't know who you are, you need to develop a contemplative prayer practice, period. And I'm like, I'm in. So whether it's meditation, depending upon what your faith tradition is, it doesn't matter. We need to cultivate stillness. So self-compassion, massive, right? Giving yourself permission to feel what you're feeling, not over-identifying with it, but actually feel it and move through it. Meditation, oils. These are all wonderful tools to help you grow in emotional resilience. And if you need more help, please feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I do one-on-one coaching. I also do group coaching. So I'm here to help. I know what it's like to struggle, and you don't have to struggle alone, all right? So I wish you all the best as we move into this holiday season, and I pray that you will find deep peace and rest on your journey. Thank you.